So if you want to start recording.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jane Trotter. I'm the president of the local League of Women Voters chapter of the Northwoods, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our monthly program. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And before we get going, there's a couple of just sort of housekeeping announcements. The first one is that the League of Women Voters of the Northwoods is fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in public and in practice. And there shall be no barriers to participation in this organization on the basis of gender, gender identity, ethnicity, race, native or indigenous origin, age, generation, sexual orientation, culture, religious beliefs or belief systems, marital status, parental status, socioeconomic status, language, accent, ability status, mental health, educational background, geography, nationality, work style, work experience, job role function, thinking style, personality type, political parties, appearance, political perspective or affiliation, or any other characteristic that can be identified as recognizing or illustrating diversity. Diversity and equity inclusion are central to this organization's current political future success and in engaging all individuals, households, communities, and policy making in creating a more perfect democracy. And in tune with that is our nonpartisan policy. So we are, after having heard all how inclusive that is, no one is excluded for their political beliefs, and we want to make certain that we remain nonpartisan. So when it comes to making comments, questions, one thing, but be aware that that is a question and it's not an opportunity to make a statement for your own particular political beliefs or you know, issues. And then the League of Women Voters of the Northwoods does remember that we practice democracy on the traditional lands of the Ojibwe, the Dakota, the Menominee, the Ho-Chunk, and the Potawatomi nations. And one last reminder, this program is being recorded. So we're going to hand it over to Sue Dirksen, and she will sort of explain to us, as she's the head of voter services on our board, and she will explain to us how we are going to go from here.
Thank you. Yo, do you want to bring up the presentation, please? And Yo and I are tag teaming today because I live in the Northwoods where broadband isn't always the best and keep getting booted out of meetings. So we're kind of covering all of our bases here. There we go. So, Yo, I have one more question. Are you going to have to move the slides?
You're muted, Yo.
There we go.
So sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself.
That's I don't have control of the screen. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're muted again, you.
There you go.
About that. I'm so sorry. I have never done this before, so bear with me.
Oh.
And
that's
maybe,
fine.
Sarah, you can unmute people or ask them to unmute because we're all muted at this point.
So, Yo, if you could go to just click on slide 2. There we go. All right, so as you all know, and I'm preaching to the choir on this, that, just a background, that the League of Women Voters, as you know, is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that was founded over 100 years ago. And it includes many devoted women and men who are working for democracy. The key point here is that the League neither supports nor opposes candidates for office at any level of government. And at the same time, the League is wholeheartedly political and works to influence policy through advocacy. So nonpartisan, this is the work that we all do as members of the League to protect democracy, the same way that our four sisters did over 100 years ago. However, we're fortunate to have many different avenues to do our work other than marching in the streets, being arrested, and being publicly ostracized for the work we do in protecting democracy. We live in an age of computers, cell phones, and the US Postal Service. So we have the opportunity to make a huge impact on the issues of today from the comfort of our own homes. We are not lacking for issues, as all of you know. In fact, we are facing some of the same issues as our four sisters did over 100 years ago that affect the stability of our democracy. Today's presentation actually came when a few of us members were talking about the detrimental impact of gerrymandering to the voters and the people of Wisconsin, regardless of our political party. As we all know, gerrymandering is a huge issue. And we were talking about how we could do more as a league to make our voices heard, and also to make other people more comfortable with making their voices heard. And as an example, you may have seen yesterday that we all got an email, those that belong to the League of Wisconsin, an alert asking us to make sure that we contacted our senator to vote no today on 2 bills that are encouraging voter suppression. So hang on to learn more about how each of you can easily make a difference impacting the major issues that we have today. This is an informal discussion and information sharing time. So as we go along, I ask that you feel free to speak up, to ask questions, either do it by unmuting yourselves or putting it into chat. Or if you have a comment that you want to put into chat, anything in there, we'll make sure that we come back to and get them addressed as well. So we're glad to have you joining us today. We thank you for your involvement with the League of Women Voters. And I'm going to take just a minute and introduce our discussion leads today, who are all pretty dynamic individuals. Yo Mistily is a retired teacher librarian. She was one of the founding members of our Northwoods chapter. And for her reward, she was a 2-term past president. And she also has worked hard to set up and also leads the efforts on Vote 411. She also has helped to develop the VRAP materials and programs that we have. Kay Hoff is a retired small business owner. In 2009, she was the recipient of Eleanor Roosevelt Grassroots Activist Award, and she was instrumental in arranging the first meeting that actually formed our Northwoods chapter. Jackie Cody is a retired educator, also an Eleanor Roosevelt Grassroots activist, and very, very involved with our community activism for the Northwoods. And I'm Sue Dirksen. I'm a repurposed corporate RN. I would say I'm retired, but it hasn't felt like that since I quit working. And I've actively been involved with voter services and currently am on the board of directors for the Northwoods. So with that, we are going to jump into our presentation, which I believe Jackie will talk about what's next.
Well, I think most, as you said, we're talking to the choir today, and many of us and many of our friends are already fans of democracy. And by fan, I mean, we have the outward accoutrements that are necessary. We attend programs, we display yard signs, we encourage others to vote. We vote ourselves in almost every election. And then we became members in the League of Women Voters. All of those are easily seen, but there's another side to us that's not so easily seen, but it's something we can do from the comfort of our own homes and still make an impact without perhaps the whole world visually seeing it as they see when I say we're a fan of democracy. And part of that comfort that we're trying to pursue here today and encourage people to do may at times feel like, but I'm only a voice. So just for a minute, disengage from this presentation, put yourself next to your favorite pond or your favorite lake, and it's near sunset or maybe just past it. And all of a sudden you hear this huge chorus come up. It's the spring peepers, and they can be so annoying. However, it's better to be a peeper with a whole chorus of friends doing the same thing than it is to be a single bullfrog voice. You hear them, but those peepers keep your attention. And what we want you to be is a peeper. Join a chorus of us as we raise our voices to speak up for individual issues that are prominent in the agenda of the League of Women Voters. Some are Wisconsin, some are national, which spills into Wisconsin, as you'll see as we go forward in the slides. But that's our point today. We just want you to be a loud chorus, a chorus where you are chirping from your home daily. I have a routine. I sit down every morning and for 15 minutes, I write 5 postcards. That's it. That's my vitamin for the day. But I got it off my chest and now it's going to be on someone's desk. And I think that it's important that people have the tactile sense, and you'll hear that as we go through this also.
I can add to that with, and I think it applies to this one too, when Jackie sends her postcards. I had mentioned earlier that 25 years ago, living in Madison, I used to volunteer for Mark Miller, then representative and became senator, every Friday morning. And my task that morning was I was given all of the letters and postcards for the day. I was given my tally sheet, and then he kept actual physical folders. So you had your issues. If it was like a longer or personal or a really interesting letter, I was supposed to flag that and put that in the folder. And then when Mark had a committee meeting that issue was being discussed about, he would pick up, that folder. When I talked with Janet Bewley's chief of staff, Joey, and said that, and he said, yeah, that was Mark Miller's style. So all of them today, of course, it's not, Joey said it, and so did Beth Meyer's staff say, all postcards and letters go on the legislator's desk. They see that. If it's a form email or just an email, the staff takes care of that and tallies it. So Jackie, your 5 morning postcards are put on whoever's desk. At least that's the information I'm hearing, is that those items go on the legislator's desk and they do see them. So.
Very good. Very good. Now we just need to have them keep track of them.
Well, they do in the computerized system called Forward. Okay. Joey went through that with me and my contacts and so on. So they do. It's an electronic form now that they do keep track of.
Very good. Very good. Well, we can say that legislators are not listening. And I think we can all point to an example of that. I saw one this morning. We have PFAS contamination in Rhinelander. And it's not just Rhinelander. Marinette is also, and now other spots are showing up in the state. And the people in this particular Vilas and Oneida County have things on their mind like, well, let's get rid of PFAS contamination. And instead we're confronted by representation that says we need to be a second sanctuary state. And so I'm introducing that bill today. That's really what's on my constituents' minds. Since when? I haven't seen a poll by Marquette on such a frivolous subject. Instead, they're doing the things that people want to do, which is 70% want Badger Care expansion. And even cannabis receives a 60%. And then if you go into the gerrymandering, it's 60% statewide, but hey, in our 2 counties, it's an 80% issue. But you won't hear that from our representatives, but we have to keep reminding them. Because down in the lower corner, that quote was from an article when there was a lot of noise around all the fraudulent balloting that went on in the state of Wisconsin. And we think it's been put to rest. However, we have to watch what happens in the West because it's going to visit our state. We're going to go and count those ballots all over again to look at that massive voter fraud that took place. Again, it's not what the people of Wisconsin want. They have other needs, and we need to become part of that group that keeps those needs alive. And I know you may feel that, well, I made my one phone call today. Well, going to have to make another and another. Remember that chorus of peepers? They're annoying. And of course, the squeaky wheel in our democracy seems to get the grease. So we need to become a very squeaky wheel in order to obtain that grease that we need to make lives better.
You know, I would like to see league members. Now, Joey did look up, they get more, you know, from issue or group. The League of Conservation Voters, you know, his particular office, which would be Janet Bewley, you know, they get lots from that. I said, do you get contacts from the League of Women Voters? He said, no, not very many. In fact, you know, he's thumbing through that thing or something. He said, I think 3. And he said, however, Kay, you've contacted Janet 14 times. So apparently that computer thing. So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe from now on, when I call, I should also add, you know, that I'm also a League of Women Voters members. I don't know, whatever the executive board, you know, prefers with that. Do you want the league to be known calling for those, or do you prefer the whole individual thing, so that if, like Pam, if you called in and wanted to know how many times have I contacted, you know, Rob Swearingen, they can tell you.
Well,
Okay, I may have something to add to that. In Wisconsin, the League of Women Voters, and actually in a lot of the country but particularly Wisconsin, we are perceived as not being nonpartisan by the people who don't want to hear our voices.
Right.
And so we need to be very careful, each one of us, if we're going to identify ourselves calling from the League of Women Voters, that we're not calling on a political issue, but an issue. And that's just a reminder. I mean, we are allowed to have opinions, but our own political opinion cannot be reflected as a League of Women Voters opinion. So,
yeah, that's why I just have never said as a league, and that's why I put that question out. I think
that's probably why they don't have comments from the League of Women Voters, simply because we don't support. We will support positions, but we cannot support partisan issues. So.
Right.
The problem is everything
may-
becomes a partisan issue at some point. So
Yeah, may I step in? I'm brand new to you guys. And I'm from Land of Lakes and love being involved with the community. And so please explain to me what the difference is between being partisan and taking a side on an issue. You know, let's look at the fraud issue, for instance. There's lots of people, voter fraud, lots of people think there wasn't any voter fraud. So if you take a position that there was, then is that partisan? Is that, you know what I'm saying? I appreciate your guidance.
If I can respond to, this is Karen Kitsey. There's a difference between being partisan and political. The League of Women Voters is political, and we do take positions on controversial subjects. And what we follow is the state and national leagues advice, which is if the state or the national has taken a position, we are totally free to make our voices heard on that position. Partisan means that you are identifying as a Democrat or a Republican or a progressive, and that we can't do. We can't support a particular candidate as a league member, but we can support any position that the state or the national has already taken a position on.
Unfortunately, right now, rarely when you take a position, it identifies your partisanship.
Yeah.
So, okay, very good. Thank you.
For asking that question, and we'll have some more information that ties into the positions that the league is taking and where you can find that as well.
This is Deborah. Could I just ask for a clarification? Could just somebody give an example of a phone call that could be made? So are we saying no phone calls should be made to legislators saying I'm for this legislation or against this legislation? Or are you saying that we can call as a league member and state our anti-gerrymandering position and say, you know, I'm Deborah Durslag, I live in Rhinelander, and I'm calling to state the league's position? That doesn't seem as effective as stating I'm Deborah Durslag and I'm against gerrymandering and these are the reasons why.
Yeah.
So could we just have a clarification of this, as an example, maybe Jane, when we could say we're league, or if only you are the spokesperson for the league as a president, unless you name somebody else.
All right, Deb, let's go up a menu. If you call and say, I'm Deborah Durslag, I live in your district. I vote for you, and I'm in favor or opposed to this particular piece of legislation. That's much more effective. If anyone can make a call, you don't need permission just because you're a league member to. That's what this is all about. I think one just needs to think carefully about calling to speak for the league, the state league and the national league. If you go onto the League of Women Voter, LWVWI.org website, you can see a list of their positions. And we have a branch of people that are particularly there to work with legislatures on those positions, and they can be sending you and are sending you as a league member scripts. Call on this issue. You don't need to call and say, I'm from the League of Women Voters, because they're already publicly out there with that. You could refer them to the, website, but more to the point, what matters most is your vote. So they care most about hearing from you as individuals, and it may not be quite as effective if you identify yourself as calling from the League of Women Voters. And I love this conversation because we're feeling our way here. But what we want is each one of those calls to count the most, and each one of those peeps. And if people hear all the peeps and say, oh, that's just the League of Women Voters, that's the problem. We tend to marginalize individual voices when we can collect them into a bin. So it's not right, but that's the way our system seems to be working at the moment. So.
I believe, though, that is a group, we could make a statement. I mean, you could, if our league decided to or wanted to make their voice heard as a league, you could write a letter or make a presentation to get your idea across as a group.
Yes.
As long as it's within our, positions, our
That makes
things we've already studied.
That makes more sense to me, that like at an executive board meeting, the decision would be made, the offices are going to make the contacts, and there will be you know, or we're going to write this letter and it'll be signed by, you know, the officers, that this is the position of the League of Women Voters of the Northwoods, of which we have blank members in your district or something. Oh.
Right. You're going right back to being a peeper versus a bullfrog, using the league as a bullfrog rather than that chorus of peepers, which is what we need, those individual contacts of your own conviction of being the voter in that district. It's going to have more impact than saying, I'm a member of this larger group. It's, and I would say a public platform adoption is probably not sure when you'd have to time that. I think I'd time it closer to whenever the activity is to take place than initially. That's just a strategy.
We have this problem with the Northwoods chapter in particular being perceived as partisan. So what, you know, like Chris, the chats are saying, good God, every issue seems to come out. And Cheryl, you were indicating that as partisan, that maybe, you know, it's really not the wisest move for the league to operate as a group.
Right.
Our whole goal today is to get individual members to be, you know, participating in their own voice, because it is their own voice that carries the wallop.
If I can interrupt, we have a couple of comments in the chat. Chris Adams asks, is there really any such thing these days as a non-political issue? Partisanship is baked into the landscape.
Yeah.
And George Prudent said, even vaccination is a partisan issue. Since both parties are pro-military and pro-sanctions, if we take a stand against military-industrial complex and endless wars and sanctions, is that considered non-partisan?
Yeah. Yeah. My vote is, I'm never saying I'm from the league. I'm just going to keep my own voice going.
Most have been weaponized. I mean, and sadly, we've fallen into that trap with every issue that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
one thing the league can do is to help. We can give our individual members and you tools to make your voice. We can help highlight to you, as happened yesterday. If you sign up and become a member, you get some really useful emails. You can get some really useful talking points in terms of who to call, where to call, when to call, and what the talking points are. And those things are very helpful. And finally, if you are members, or those of you who are considering membership, you know, and are attending this, have issues, questions, things that you need help with, you can email us at the LWVNOW information at LWVNOW, and we can kind of take a look and see what are those things that you're seeing happen in your community that you're frustrated with, because you're not feeling that you're needing more help in affecting change. And you know, that may be something the league already has a position on, water quality, for instance. And so you're not out there by yourself in that regard.
Can I jump in here for a couple of minutes? I think that what's been missing from our toolkit so far in this discussion is the idea of personal relationships with our legislators. Some of us would find it more easy to have a personal relationship with legislator A as opposed to legislator B, based on our own personal take on the universe. But if you go to the Wisconsin legislature's website and you click on your assembly rep or your Senate rep's profile and take a look down the list of bills that they've co-sponsored, which appears on the right-hand side of the page, or even just Google their name and try to find one thing that you agree on. If you find that this is difficult for you with an individual legislator A or B, and start by sending a positive message about something that you agree with this legislator on, it might help develop a relationship so that they will not discount your peeps on a whole bunch of other issues that they might find themselves on the opposite side of. The other thing is that stating what you're for when you need to disagree with them, you know, couching your message as, you know, what you're for in terms of how to decide what the maps will be going forward, as opposed to what you're against, might help the situation as well. I know this is really tricky, but we just have to be really careful about how we message. I think I'll end it with that.
Chris, that is exactly what all three staffers that I talked to said. I know this is hard, but I can guarantee you, if you start your commentary or phone call with, thank you for your support of such and such.
Right.
He said, I can tell you when that goes on the desk, it's at the top of the pile.
Yeah, because they get so few communications that are positive.
Yep.
People don't take the time, even with a legislator that you agree with most of the time, to say add a girl or add a boy. Okay.
Yes.
You know, and this is particularly true if you're dealing with staff people, because the staff people are the first line of defense. If you make a call, you know, and they take a lot of crap. And even, I mean, the Wisconsin Library Association has made a brand out of handwritten thank you notes. And we, whenever we have an interaction with a legislator, whether it's someone that we personally agree with most of the time or not, we make sure that there's a follow-up with a handwritten thank you note. And that makes a difference in the long term.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. So.
The other thing that I will add is that we're talking about our state and federal legislators at this point. A better way to make an impact is to get to know your local government officials, like your town board, your city council, school boards, county board. That's a better way to get to know your local people and then develop a relationship with them. So keep that in mind.
Right, because the legislators talk to particularly county board people or a town chairman or a city mayor.
Or if you can identify someone that your legislator that you might be a bit hesitant approaching, someone that person hangs out with or listens to or is in their circle of advocacy, comfort, okay? Sometimes sending a message through a different party is helpful. I know this is getting kind of wonky and kind of weird, but it beats coming at them from as though you're from the school of pugilistic advocacy.
Yeah.
So I would just support what Yo is saying about the locals, because what was it? Before the pandemic, when we went to try and get 2 referendums before our local town boards, and I had absolutely no relationship with the elected officials other than the clerk, and they let us speak our hearts over like 2 or 3 meetings, but we got nowhere. And I swore I was going to start going to meetings. I didn't, but we can always begin again and start again. And I think, and starting locally sometimes is a little bit easier, but I agree that's important.
I just remember Jim Holprin presented the referenda and he was turned down, So Jim said, well, he said, thanks for letting me talk anyway. So when he's going back, he said, hey, it doesn't matter who you are. If they're not going to do it, they're not going to do it. So don't take it personal.
Well, Deb, your town board would appreciate seeing someone there at a meeting.
Yeah.
We go to Pelican Town Board meetings, go to Newbold Town Board meetings, and there's nobody there. And someone should be there, if nothing more than to say something under public comment that's positive about what they've done, or to enlighten them as to perhaps there's another way of looking at this. Either way you go, your town board will be grateful that someone is there.
Yep.
And Jackie, that's a good lead in. Thank you, because the league is growing an observer corps, and observer corps do exactly what you're talking about. Show up at meetings, even very local small town meetings. And there's not always a time for public comment, but if you show up at those meetings week after week, month after month, you do develop a relationship.
Definitely. And yes, they do have to have public comment on the agenda, at least as a final item. But I do believe some towns are changing now to the fact that they'll be putting it at the beginning and at the end, because there are some topics that come up in those meetings where citizens should be heard before a vote is taken by 3 people.
This is Pat. Can I speak?
Yes.
Pat Formans. I'm on the county board, and I go to our town board meetings in Harrison, and you're right, there's only a few people that ever show up, but I noticed one person started just coming and now is incorporated into the issues that are going on. And, it is really appreciated. The town boards like to hear what people think, and they're, at least ours, a chair is very respectful. On the county board level, I don't hear from many people about issues unless I voted something they didn't like, which they didn't tell me beforehand, that kind of thing. And so it's really hard to be able to, they don't want to hear the reason that you didn't vote. You know what I mean? There's some people that are just not going to do that. But yeah, anyway, some thoughts from me.
Patricia, I find it interesting. Now, do you report to your town board what activities might be important to them to know from the county board meeting?
Interesting question. I try to do that at times.
Okay.
But so much of our town board is taken up with roads and permits for driveways. You know what I mean? Truly, I'm not knocking it because they do a good job. But some of the things that I'm involved with at the county level are complicated, like the North Central Healthcare. We have a tri-county agreement for crisis and mental health services. And I'm telling you, after 2 years on that board, I'm just understanding what's going on. So it would be really hard to articulate and find a way that it would be relevant to some of the people there. But they do ask me questions, and I do try to, when I know something that will be of interest to them at that level, I will report it.
Well, I've noticed that it's inconsistent in reporting from a county board representative representing, well, basically 2,500 people, and not saying anything, not coming back to the people as a sounding board. And I guess that's all on us because we're not keeping track of local issues. But I find I would like to be able to move something where county board members are responsible and have to report back to at least the town board somehow, in which they get more feedback than what they're getting right now. They seem like they're out there, the 21 of them, just kind of winging it. And,
I would, Pat, I would agree with you 100%. And I think some discussion of how to do that, because I'm not sure I've ever even heard that discussion about among the county board members as to how to do that. And I think that is important, but I don't think there's a structure for it. And the town boards would have to be educated too,
Yes.
that's important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. Well, it's something to work on in the future.
We have one comment in chat that is from Tom Giroux that says that he thinks the list of official league positions tends to align with one particular partisan party. And as a result, we tend to be pigeonholed as liberals. So name an issue where the league has taken a conservative viewpoint, which is a good point here. And he also goes on to say that maybe we should take Karen Adams-Went's advice, that being that we get to figure out how to work with our legislators and give them some positive feedback as well.
Well, when you err on the side of common good, you're probably going to end up on the wrong side of every issue. If you go back to where Chris is at, which is to find something positive to say to them before you tell them the alternative, that's a nice approach. And I guess that still puts us in the wrong side of the common good. But I don't know how to ameliorate that unless we weaponize the common good now.
Well, I'll jump in and say something too. It is really difficult because there's a difference between conservative issues and untruth, lies. And we're facing a political atmosphere that is very, very difficult right now. I mean, it's hard to even name a conservative issue, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I do.
That's part of the difficultness of how everything has become partisan when it's not really partisan. It is issue oriented. And we've talked about the common good, we've talked about democracy, and all of the issues that we have come out are around protecting our democracy and being involved in our democracy. So it is a challenge right now to try to find common ground on a lot of issues, but I don't even know if there are any truly conservative issues happening right now.
Well, that goes back to what do they stand for? And right now, as I think you pointed out, is that trying to weed through the lies and where are the issues is very difficult.
So you guys, I have to tell you that I'm going to have to leave because you're talking to one of those conservatives right now, and I am offended. You guys are extremely partisan. I want to get involved. I want to have the tools. I'm very concerned, as you are, about the state of affairs. Every issue that is an issue in the United States is as conservative as it is liberal. If you look at the border, that is a conservative issue as much as it is a liberal issue. We just look at things through a different lens. And I'm sad to hear you guys are partisan.
Cheryl, could you elaborate on what you mean by conservative lens? What is your conservative lens? I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
We view limited government. We recognize that our government isn't a democracy, it is a republic. So it doesn't mean that the majority wins. In fact, our Bill of Rights protects the individual. And we are the least democratic government the world has ever seen. And the reason for that is because our government is designed to protect the individual. It's not mob-based. And democracy is a mob. So by not being a democracy, it means the littlest guy has the same voice. And that brings so much good to the common people. And that's the lens is we believe self-empowering people gives the best result for the common good. And I guess in a nutshell, as I'm being nervous, that's how I put it. So all these issues, I've just read the position on the bills that are being voted on today in Wisconsin, and I disagree with your positions on every one of them. I
Cheryl,
believe that.
You're
What's that?
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you are speaking very well, and don't hesitate. You know, when I'm in a group of people and they all agree, I get very uneasy. I think about what are we missing? What unintended consequences, what unheard voices are we missing? You know, we're all after what's best.
Correct.
We just don't know how to get there. And the only way to get there is through a vigorous discussion, advocacy, and listening to one another. And so, Cheryl, we need you. So go ahead, talk some more.
Well, can I say something first, since I'm also a Cheryl? Is I agree 100%. We need you in our league. We with other.
Well, I've been seeking I would love to be a Supreme Court justice.
The league.
What's that? I would love to be a Supreme Court justice because they get to study an issue to the root of it all. And they have the time and they're paid for it and all that sort of thing. And so I've been dreaming through all this turmoil in the last, for me, 12 years now, politically or in the government, governing issues, to have a group of people where we sit at the table intentionally knowing we have different views and try to come to some common ground. And, you know, I can't do that with my friends or family. And I think, oh my God, how could our government ever do it if you can't do it with your friends and family? So I am actively seeking to get involved and quit complaining about what's going on and do something. So this is why I came to this meeting. I saw the notice in the paper, in the news review. And you know, if you can handle having someone that might have a little bit different perspective on things, then, and I'll keep giving it a try.
Cheryl, this is Jane.
Yes.
I'm just going to read to you what our mission statement is about us from our website. See if any piece of this is aligns with your goals. The League of Women Voters of the Northwoods encompasses the northern counties of Wisconsin, Florence, Forest, Langlade, Lincoln, and Oneida and Vilas. Our local league belongs to the State and National League of Women Voters. The league encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The league is proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level, but always working on vital issues of concern to members and public. And that really is what we're about. So access to the polls for all who are legally allowed to vote. We're about inclusivity, and we're about education, because we believe that informed and engaged voters become voters and become effective voters. And that's what we do.
Yeah, and I think it's wonderful. So I'm looking forward to getting to know you all and the organization more. The policy positions might be difficult for me, but at least I can share my take on it
Well,
as time goes on.
thank you, because the way our local leagues may adopt a policy position, but it's rare. And there is a huge, long consensus process on the state and the national league level before any policy position is adopted.
Sure.
And it's a fascinating experience to be part of. So, that is our local league is not going to just decide at one board meeting to adopt a policy position on anything.
Very good.
And I would just jump in, Cheryl, this is Lori Glowak, I'm on the board. We need more conversations with multiple points of view. So I truly hope that you join us and that you speak often and loudly.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me chime in, and I look forward to meeting each of you. How many members do you have?
Around 75.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
very good.
currently have 75 members.
Wonderful.
And when one joins the league, we call it guilt-free membership at this point. And this sort of comes because I want to invite everybody that is not currently a member of a league to consider joining, because at the very least, what you get is some pretty interesting information. And you get the opportunity to just sometimes when we retire, we join something and all of a sudden everybody's all over us to do 100 things. You can participate to the level of your comfort level. And so, for instance, that may just be getting a sign that says vote to put out in front. Doesn't say vote for X or don't vote for Y. It just says vote. Maybe that's all somebody wants to do when they first start. So there's a lot of different ways to learn and grow if one joins the league.
And Cheryl, the introductory phrase that is music to my ears in league conversations is, I respectfully disagree for the following reasons. Let me enumerate. And then we can discuss things together.
Right.
How's that sound to you?
It sounds great. Like I said, I've tried to get a group together and people get too personally invested and their feelings get hurt. And I'm not like that. I mean, I know so many people who have differing views than I do. And I want to find out why, and I want them to hear why mine are the way they are. And I want to be at a table where we can all have a conversation and walk away friends.
Oh, good.
I'm mindful of the time, and thank you. It took a lot of nerve to speak up, Cheryl. So, and then we did put you on the spot, and which was not intended, but may have been a good opportunity for you. So, thank you. Because sometimes it takes nerve to do that. How are we doing on time, Deb? I don't know. I mean, Sue.
We have lined up some issues here. I think Kay and Yo and Jackie, can we just kind of move forward here and basically kind of those key points that we had about how people can get involved easily?
Okay. First of all, you're on the slide with the issue, League of Women Voters National. Yep. And then notice the third column, there's a star, local chapters. That means local chapters could engage in activities about the issues that are already a priority of the national or the state league. Right today, for instance, if you're interested in For the People's Act, then please live stream. They're marking the bill up today, and you'll get to hear both sides of the issue of why we shouldn't have the things or should have the items, which we'll articulate in a different slide. But wherever there's a red point, you should take an action. Please note an equal rights amendment. That has been changed already because it's passed the House, and we are now into SJ Resolution 1, and it's to call your US Senator to ask that they support the Equal Rights Amendment. Tammy Baldwin is not a co-sponsor as of yet. The people who are supporting it are Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, Angus King, and then Cardine, I believe, a Democrat from Maryland. And those are the only 4 sponsors for ERA. We've been at this 98 years, people. So might be something you want to take some time to look at today. Send a postcard.
Okay, we'll move on to the next.
We may need to skip some of, we had some individual facts and stuff up here, but I think, you know, we want to make sure in the essence of time that we share resources as well.
Yes.
So Jackie and Kay, if there's comment you want to make or yell about any of these slides, just speak up and we'll kind of keep moving here.
Okay, and this particular one, this is in the For the People Act. Cue in on campaign finance. Yeah, there's some pretty historic. When I first looked at it, I didn't realize how much it was going to encompass. There's a whole bunch on foreign interference in the elections and financing of them. But there's a larger section on how small donors get to be more of the engine and tamping down Citizens United. The best resource, if I were watching the hearings today, I would have up on my computer the annotated guide for the People Act 2021. The whole thing can be found on the Brennan Center. Go there, get it up, and watch them mark up the bill and see which parts get changed.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to say a lot here. I think this is a pretty well-known topic.
Yep. Here's that thing about county boards again. In Oneida County, see all those little purple dots? Well, that's because 58% of the people in Oneida County voted 80% or better to end gerrymandering. And then when citizens went back to their county board members to find out if their county board members would then support what the people had wanted, the county board members said, no, I'm going to vote the way I want to vote. Oh, okay. Representative democracy. We need to take a closer look, form a relationship if need be with county board members, but I would think that their first duty is to represent what their constituents have spoken about.
I had talked about the deadlines. Most of that action won't take place until September when the census results are given. So we're going to see all the map drawing and the back and forth from this September to April 15th of 2022, when those district lines have to be in place for the people who are running for Congress and US Senate can file their papers, collect their signatures in June, or I mean in May, and turn them in June 1st. So you know, from this fall to next spring, you're going to see lawsuits filed, and it'll depend whether it's filed in state court or federal court, where it's going to go. But there'll be a lot of action in those 6 months from September to next March. That's when you're going to see it. Right now, there's not much being done because the census results have been delayed until September 1st.
A caution on the S1 that's being marked up today. It has gerrymandering clauses in it, but it's not the gerrymandering that has to do with the states in the sense that it's only gerrymandering for congressional districts, the 7th and the 8th being primary. We put this slide in because you don't have to listen. You don't have to hear when you know you're pretty well set to win your district. And so we get this disconnect between what people are wanting or needing and the representation that is completely opposite.
Okay, the Equal Rights Amendment at the federal level, it's been in process for a long, long time. It passed the Congress in '72, and then it went to the states. And in order to become an amendment to the US Constitution, we had to have 38 states ratify it. Wisconsin was one of the first ones in 1972, but they never got enough states to ratify before the deadline was reached in 1982. But then in the 20-teens, the issue became a lot more apparent again, and 2 states passed it in 2017 and then one in 2018. And then in 2020, the final state that was needed ratified it. So we have 38 states that have ratified it. However, the deadline has passed. So then they went to court and the court said, yes, the deadline is passed. It cannot become an amendment. So now it's up to Congress to remove the deadline. The House has already done that. And a resolution went through the Senate in the 2019-20 session of Congress, and it died in committee. So at this point, we need the Senate to come up with another resolution to remove the deadline. And that's where it sits right now. So that's a way you can contact your senators.
Yeah.
Tammy Baldwin did sign on to the SJ Resolution 6 when it came around last session. So I'm sure that she would do it again if it gets introduced. And then in Wisconsin, many states have also passed an Equal Rights Amendment. Wisconsin does not have one in our Constitution. However, it was introduced in March of this year to add the ERA to our Wisconsin Constitution. It would be a very long process to get it through the Wisconsin's Constitution because it has to pass both houses of the legislature once, and then they wait for a general election to happen, and they pass it through both houses again, and then it'll come to the people to vote whether they want an Equal Rights Amendment to be added to the Constitution. So this would take a while, but if it's an issue that's important to you, it's time to contact your legislators.
On that note, I'm putting in the Wisconsin legislator, which was Lisa Subeck, 78th rep out of Madison, and she introduced it, the constitutional amendment. And so I've sent her a thank you postcard encouraging others to send to her. And then a postcard of encouragement to Tammy Baldwin for Resolution 1, which is on the docket at federal level. And I'll put her address in also. So, hey, there you go. There's your segue into thank you for Resolution 6. Now let's take a look at Resolution 1.
Okay. This is an issue that would be nonpartisan in my mind totally, as it involves infrastructure throughout the state. And the League in Wisconsin is sponsoring informational and educational sessions about the different categories of the infrastructure report that came out in 2020. I'm going to go to the next one. These are when the sessions will be taking place throughout the summer about the different categories, and you can see the grades that were given for each of those categories. They've already had the one on energy, which is one of our best category. So this information is on our webpage. First screen on our website, LWVNOW.org. If you go there, you can see when they will be, and it gives the links where you can register to participate. And then the next
don't neglect the last one. I'm moderating the last one on the what is it, August 19th or 17th on hazardous and solid waste.
Okay, yeah, even though that's got a good grade, we still need to improve, obviously. Yep. Okay, and the next issue that we wanted to highlight was the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which would guarantee that the person who receives the most votes in all 50 states and the District of Columbia would be the winner of the election. Each state's electoral votes would be pledged to that national vote winner. And currently it's been passed in 16 or 15 states and the District of Columbia, which have 195 electoral votes. And of course, you probably all know that 270 is the amount that the Electoral College calls for. So what's needed now is for other states to pass their bill in their states. It has to pass both houses of their legislature before it would be enacted to become a part of the compact. Wisconsin would have 10 votes to add to the total. Currently, I think that there are 9 states where a bill has been passed in one house of their legislature, and they still need to pass it to the rest of their legislature. And the total number from those states is 85. So it's moving along, but very slowly. Here in Wisconsin, a bill has been introduced in the Assembly to become a part of the National Popular Vote Compact, and it's in the Committee on Campaigns and Elections right now. And I will say that I checked to see if any legislators in our area had co-sponsored or signed on to this bill, and there aren't any. So that's another way where you can talk to or contact our local legislators to ask them to co-sponsor this if you're interested in it. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Dolan, just a couple of points. It's possible that this bill can get just bottled up in committee and never be discussed and voted on and never see the light of day. So it might be a good idea to focus on the individuals who are on that committee.
Good point.
As opposed to everybody else. I mean, you know, if you email Rob Swearingen, for instance, and you say, I'm interested in this, I'd like to see it move in committee. Could you please talk to your colleagues? You know, I mean, that's fine. But if that's the level that it's at, then you need to convince enough of the people on that committee to at least talk about it.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. Good points. Now, tomorrow night, if you're interested in this topic, the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin is hosting a presentation on the National Popular Vote. So if you want to learn more about this issue, this is a good way to do that. Okay. And here is a list. Are you still with us, Sue?
This is a list of your legislative contacts, and what's interesting in our district is that we're pretty much all, you know, centered around the same senators for the state senate, except for when you get up around portions up there of Vilas County, that shifts over, and you've got Janet Bewley in there and Beth Myers as an assembly person. So the fact that we are a 6-county league we have to be very cognizant of the fact that, you know, we've got to look at all of those areas. And so as we're putting out information, we want to make sure everybody understands that, and we're being very inclusive as to the information.
I will say that this, well, we'll get to that later. Never mind. Okay. And here's a document that will help you if you want to get a list of all of your people who represent you. There's a nice little document that you can use to keep track of everybody.
You know, I
And if you-
remember the first
ahead.
time I presented that at an AAUW meeting. And I think there might have been only one person in the room who knew anything, you know, about the state level, and many did not even know who their representatives were. That was the first time I thought, oh Lord, you know, people don't pay, there are lots of people who don't pay attention the way some of us do. But that's an interesting little sheet if you just want to print it off and see what you can write in just for memory. This goes back to what several have been saying, to develop a relationship with your elected officials. Because then when you pick up the phone and call, that staffer recognizes you. And if you have, you know, if you can come up with that thank you for what they've done and so on, as Chris was talking about, then the staffer is less inclined to roll the eyes when, you know, they say, oh my God, it's that person from Oneida County again. But, you know, that's what it takes to build a relationship, I think.
This is Deborah. I would say, I would just add to that our town board members, because if we're shifting really local and developing relationships locally.
That's your first line.
I know, but you only have the town board chair.
No, I have supervisors on the line underneath.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the whole board and the treasurer and the clerk, because we're the league and we're working with clerks. So, and you know, as we're asked to do presentations about becoming a candidate, I think this would be a wonderful sheet to have available. I think all of our members should fill this out and go through this exercise. It's really what we're all about. So thank you for resharing this. Yeah, it's great.
The town clerk is the most powerful person in a town board. That person is the gatekeeper as to who does and what gets on that agenda. They do all the research in the town. They could name anything you need to know. It's not the chair, it's the clerk that holds the power. And that's probably one of the least positions people think about when they go to vote in a town election. It's important who holds that office, probably more so than any other offices in the town.
Right, but many of those clerks are appointed, not elected. You know, and many towns have clerk treasurer combo and it's appointed.
I think that's much more prevalent in Vilas. That's not the case in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is quite prevalent in Vilas.
Yeah, see, in Oneida, they're elected. And there's only one place where there's a combo. Otherwise, it's all elected.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that is different. Yeah, okay.
This is Jane. I need to ask one question. One of the things that we haven't talked about in terms of participatory democracy is actually running for election. We do have some league members that have run for election. Do we have any slides in here that talk about resources and how to do it, timelines or anything like that?
No, that this was more about speaking out today and making your voice heard. We had not gone down that candidacy role yet, so no, Jane, we don't in this presentation.
Thank you.
Now, if you don't know who your local people are, and if that's okay if you don't know, a way to find out is to go to the website myvote.wi.gov and type in your address, and then select the elected officials, and it will go through all of your officials if you don't know who they are, even your school board members. So
Then, that should go on the top of the list.
it's down at the bottom there.
Is it?
We're at the very bottom, it says check my vote for the legislate to find out who represents you.
Yeah, but if we really want to go to vote 411, yeah. Okay, very good.
Vote 411 does not get you to that information. You have to use that my vote to get to that information. I already checked that out.
Okay, I take that back. Thank you.
That's okay.
Which, if any, of our state representatives, state assembly people, or senators have local office hours that permit you to make an appointment to go talk with them?
That's probably available on their websites, I would think. That information.
They hold listening sessions periodically, which are, and some are more well publicized than others.
Right.
But office hours, that's a good question.
They have listening sessions, but generally I've attended only one or two, I have to say, but they weren't really, I mean, it just didn't seem very, I don't know what word to use, very back and forth informative, you know what I mean? It was almost like it was not worth the while going, at least in the time I went. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Are you saying it seemed staged?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yes, Dorothy. So.
And sometimes they aren't that well publicized when they have their listening sessions. I always hear about my representatives after the fact. So I don't know how to, I get their newsletters and stuff, but I never hear about the listening sessions.
That's a good point. Pat, that's a good point, because I think I noticed them very a short timeline before they do it, but it is published in the paper here.
Yeah, I don't get.
For what it's worth, the former news director of WXPR, which is public community radio, found that it was very difficult for them to get the information on many of the representatives' local listening sessions, which would have been something that they could have gone and covered in broadcast, but that the people holding the listening sessions were only interested in letting selective groups and not the general constituency at large know about this. And so it becomes kind of a game. And when the local public radio station can't get information on when those listening sessions are for news purposes, that says something.
This is another good reason for individuals to get to know the staff members of the legislative offices. If you call and, excuse me, and ask who's answering the phone, and give your name and say that you're interested in knowing when listening sessions will be held in your area. You know, I mean, that's at least an opening. And the email addresses of all the staff members are listed on that legislative website at the state level. And you can follow up in a couple of weeks and say, you know, this is my email address. I'd really like to be put on your newsletter list. And could you please let me know when legislator A or B is going to be in my area holding office hours? I mean, it doesn't hurt.
Okay. And this slide, you can see the league, the different levels of the league, national, state, and our local league. These are all hyperlinks. I'm sorry, I did this document or something similar to it is on our website at this point in time, which we were going to tell you about. So if you're trying to figure out how to get to talk to the legislator, blah, blah, blah. You'll have a link for that if you want to go and check it out on our website. There are amazing resources at each level, from the national down to our local chapter level, that if you start poking around out there, I was just, over the time I belonged to the league, been amazed at what I could find as far as tools that help me, you know, examples of things to use. So I encourage everybody just to check on all of these or any of these. And we brought up some different resources today. This is just some actually very good organizations and websites that are out there that, again, we encourage you to look there, to check them out. I know Jackie had just put in the chat room the link to the Brennan Center to be able to follow what's going on today with the changes at the hearing. And again, we were trying to just make sure we could get some resources in front of you. So as you're thinking about this and diving deeper and want to know more about the overall issues, you know, where can you go? Where can you look?
And my favorite was that orange one on the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. If you click, it has those 5 important issues that we were talking about. But if you click on number 2 about the nonpartisan redistricting, then bang, you've got the 1 page, and it lists all of those issues from that earlier page from the People's Act and so on. And it's a really concise little summary. If you don't want to go down rabbit hole, I would say that's a good site. You'll get all 5 of those issues